Imagine being a celebrity pastor at the height of your fame, preaching to thousands, rubbing shoulders with Justin Bieber. Then one day, your affair explodes across every headline. You lose your job, your church, your reputation, and your marriage hangs by a thread. 6 years later, that same couple just announced they're not hiding. They're writing a book about how they survived infidelity and rebuilt everything. Carl and Laura Lentz are back with Overcoming Infidelity. But can you really heal from betrayal that public? Stick around because what they reveal might change how you see forgiveness forever. But here's the question everyone's asking. Is this redemption or reputation rehab? Let's rewind and look at how we even got here. Carl Lentz wasn't your average pastor. He was the guy in ripped jeans, designer sneakers, eye tattoos, and charisma for days. Back in 2010, he helped launch Hillsong Church, a branch of the Australian megachurch founded by Brian Houston. And from the moment those doors opened, the energy was different. The music was louder, the crowd was younger, and the message? Relatable, real, raw. Carl wanted to make church cool again, and for a while, it worked. His congregation had some serious star power. Justin Bieber, Kendall Jenner, Kevin Durant, and the media couldn't get enough of him. He was on Good Morning America, profiled by GQ, and praised as the pastor to the stars. For a minute there, Carl wasn't just preaching about Jesus, he was the brand. But you know how it goes. When fame mixes with faith, the spotlight burns a little hotter. And behind that polished image, things were already starting to crack. In November 2020, everything unraveled. Brian Houston, Hillsong's global leader, announced Carl's firing, citing leadership issues and moral failures. Shortly after, Carl admitted to having an affair with a woman named Raanan Kareem, who later went public about their relationship. It was everywhere: headlines, social media firestorms, even questions about spiritual abuse allegations from former staff. Carl stepped down, went public with an apology on Instagram saying, "I was unfaithful in my marriage, the most important relationship in my life, and held accountable for that. This failure is on me, and me alone, and I take full responsibility for my actions." Let's be real. The internet exploded. Headlines everywhere. Social media in chaos. People who once looked up to him felt betrayed. And suddenly, the golden boy of Hillsong was gone. But it wasn't just Carl who paid the price. His wife, Laura, who had been by his side for 17 years, was blindsided. She later opened up about the emotional toll, saying she battled anxiety, depression, and even PTSD after the scandal. In her own words, "I have never experienced anxiety or PTSD until this year. I have struggled with a mild depression for many years, but this year it got to be so bad that there were days I didn't want to get out of bed." And just like that, the Lentz family disappeared. No public appearances, no social media, no church, just silence. After leaving New York, the Lentz family packed up and moved to Florida. Carl kept a low profile, reportedly working as a life coach. Then, in 2023, he re-emerged in the Hillsong, a megachurch exposed. And for the first time since everything fell apart, we heard his side. He said, "We are not in ministry, and that's okay. We're in recovery." It wasn't a polished statement. It felt raw, honest. He talked about therapy, accountability, and trying to rebuild his marriage, step by step. Laura also appeared briefly, and it wasn't as the pastor's wife. It was as a woman reclaiming her story after betrayal. For many, that moment felt like a turning point, maybe even the start of something new. Fast forward to 2026. Carl and Laura Lentz have announced a joint book titled Overcoming Infidelity: 10 Conversations to Help Heal the Hurt. It's set to release this October, and they say it's part story, part guide, meant to help couples rebuild trust after betrayal. According to their publisher, it's a guide for couples navigating the aftermath of infidelity, from both sides of the pain. In their own words, they wrote, "This isn't about pretending we've got it all figured out. It's about walking with others through the same valley we've been in." They say writing the book forced them to relive some painful memories, but it also helped them heal together. And honestly, That sounds brave, but also complicated, because not everyone sees it that way. When the news dropped, reactions were split right down the middle. Some people praised the couple, saying things like, if they can survive that, maybe there's hope for us too. But others weren't so convinced. A lot of people called it a rebranding attempt. Some felt suspicious. One ex-user wrote, "What is Carl Lentz really up to? He wants back into the pulpit," implying this could be more about career revival than healing. Another posted, "Carl Lentz, a famous Hillsong church pastor, has multiple affairs in 2020 and gets fired." Now him and his wife, Checks Notes, wrote a book called Overcoming Infidelity and are on the speaking and podcast circuit. Never waste an opportunity to cash in on crisis. Jesus, FYI. Don't take marriage advice from them. That mix of admiration, doubt, and outright criticism tells you a lot about how complicated this story feels to people. Critics argue that while growth is important, turning your recovery into a product, especially after a scandal involving leadership abuse, raises tough questions. But here's the flip side. Others pointed out that healing is messy, and sometimes sharing your story is how you make sense of it. It's a classic tension, accountability versus redemption. And this story? It sits right in that gray area. The truth is, Carl Lentz's story isn't just about one man. It's part of a much bigger pattern, the rise and fall of celebrity pastors. Think Mark Driscoll, Brian Houston, Ravi Zacharias, leaders who became larger than the message they preached. When the pulpit turns into a platform and fame replaces accountability, things go sideways fast. And Carl once said he wanted to bring Jesus to culture. But somewhere along the way, culture started shaping him more than the message did. It's a tough reminder that charisma can fill seats, but only character keeps them filled. In early previews of Overcoming Infidelity, Laura talks about how forgiveness wasn't about excusing the past. It was about freeing herself from it. Carl, on the other hand, writes about facing the mirror, about the guilt of realizing how his actions broke everything he stood for. And to be fair, they don't sound like they're glamorizing their pain. It reads more like two people still figuring it out, in real time. But whether readers see that as humility or self-justification, that's up to them. Either way, it's going to spark a bigger conversation about grace, hypocrisy, and what healing really looks like when everyone's watching. At the end of the day, this isn't just about Carl and Laura Lentz. It's about us. It's about how we handle failure, forgiveness, and second chances. Redemption is never easy. It's not linear. And it's definitely not made for the camera. Whether this book becomes a genuine tool for healing or just another chapter in a comeback, time will tell. But maybe the real takeaway here is this. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to keep walking, even when trust feels shattered. So, what do you think? Is this a story of grace or just good marketing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've made it this far, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Because trust me, there's always more to unpack. Thanks for watching, friends. See you in the next one.